We're going to have a quick look at setting up regular Updraftplus backups to Dropbox. Updraftplus by default will just backup files into a folder inside your WordPress installation. But to make it more useful, you want them to be stored automatically to somewhere in the cloud where you can get hold of them in case there's a problem with your site. And you want that to be done at a regular interval. So set up a schedule so that it will do that regularly. And so in our previous video, we showed how to set up Updraftplus, how to use it to back up and to restore your file. So we'll use how to restore your WordPress site. And what we're going to do now is finesse that configuration so that you've got, so you can leave it in the background and it will just back up automatically. I will put a link to the other video in the comments of this video. So our site that we're going to look at is this, which is our WooCommerce demo site. This is the site that we've restored in the previous video using our backups. And so what we're going to do now is go through and have a look at the dashboard and go through to our Updraftplus settings. So we have our backup that we did for our first video, and this is the one that we did manually. And we can see that there's nothing scheduled for either the files or the database. So if we go into settings, and this settings tab here, you can see that it's made up of two parts. It's got a schedule at the top and a remote storage beneath it. So say we wanted to back up daily, we can just sort of choose daily here, maybe for the files and database, and store maybe a couple of historic backups as well. So what are we doing here? Well, with our schedule, if we had a site that was being updated frequently, we might want to back it up more often. So you can see there the most frequent backup schedule is every 2 hours. If it's very rarely being updated, then we might want to back it up monthly. But we can set all of these. And we can change it for files and for database as well. So imagine a scenario where maybe you've got lots of updates happening to the text, but infrequently updating images or plugins and things like that. So you might have the database backing up frequently, every hour, every 2 hours, but the files maybe less frequently. You see by default the database here can be backed up every hour, whereas the most frequent for the files is every 2 hours. So I would normally set up something that backed up daily and maybe kept 7 or so scheduled backups, so you can go back a week or so in case there's any problems with the site. For the purposes of this, I'll say every 2 hours and maybe every hour for the database. And I will store 12 files, so that's 24 hours, and 24 database backups, so we can go back 24 hours for both of these. If I save this and we look at the tab here for the backup and restore, you'll see that this scheduled backup is now scheduled for 13:56 and the time now is 13:54. So the first backup will happen shortly after configuring it. However, these files will be stored with the hosting, so where the WordPress site is. We've not configured anything yet to say where those files should be sort of copied to so that they're safe. So let's have a look at this. This is the remote storage, and this is somewhere that it will copy those backup files to, so that, say for example, your hosting stopped working and all the files were lost, then you could take the files from there and restore your site using those files. And so there's lots of popular third-party remote storage, Dropbox, Azure, sort of a generic OpenStack, S3, Rackspace. So all of these things, Google Drive, all of these places, you may well have an account with one of these. If you don't, there's things like FTP, which is a popular file copying protocol. SFTP is similarly an easy way of copying files to a server. Generally, you would only use those if you recognized it and you knew what they meant. We're going to look at Dropbox because so many people use it and it's so easily used with something like this. So, to link Dropbox, what we do is we click on it and you see it's highlighted it. And you'll see in the bottom half below it, or the bottom half here, it's now put some Dropbox settings. So, see, as we click through the different settings, it changes the configuration below. So we're going to go with Dropbox and have a look at what we can set up. And the first thing you have to do is authenticate with Dropbox. So at the moment, it will generate the files, but it'll have no way of being able to send them over to Dropbox because it's not logged in. And so you have to authenticate it. So what we have to do is, you see here where it says after you have saved your settings, come back here and complete authentication. That's because we need to click save so that it knows that we've chosen Dropbox. So let's just do that first. And you see now it's come up and it's prompted us to follow the link to authorize access to the Dropbox account. So we'll click on that and we get this. You see here? So it's actually going to the Updraftplus account, to Updraftplus server first. And what this is doing is it's building the link between your site and Dropbox. So we click on complete setup and you see this has linked our Dropbox account to our Updraftplus. So now we know that any backups that take place will be copied over to Dropbox as well. Okay, so we're now linked and we're going to take a look at what it looks like over in Dropbox. So let's have a look at our Dropbox. So we're going to have a look here. This is our Dropbox account, and the place where it puts it is under a folder called apps, and we don't have anything there at the moment within our Dropbox account. So what we will do is we'll kick off a manual backup and we'll go through the process and it'll generate the files as it did before. You see that our we've got our scheduled one due to be run later, but this is going to back up now. And you see it's doing this additional step, uploading files to remote storage. And this will take a little bit longer because zipping up the files is quick, but then all of this other stuff has to be done over the network. So if we have a look on Dropbox and see where these files are, we go into our Dropbox account. On all files you'll find a folder called apps, and the files tend to go into this folder here called Updraftplus. You'll find a copy of the files that were stored using Updraftplus. So these are our offsite copies now. If we were to run another backup, you see it creates the backups and then it'll upload them again. And once it's done the first one, we'll start having a look and see. So if we have a look in Dropbox, you see now it's starting to fill up these with just now. It starts to copy over a second set. So rather than replacing the old files with the new ones, you'll find that it builds up and you get multiple copies of the backups and the dates in the file name. So there, if we click here, you'll see it's 1402 that file was taken, and this here, it says 1415. So these files are separate, and so you can go back to a particular date and time. If we go back and wait for that to finish, and you see that it shows both of those backups now.